Anish, we are standing here in the middle of these wonderful new sculptures, and they are printed in a way by a machine. They are machine generated, and it's very interesting to see how sure you make a drawing, you have an imagination of what you want to have in the end as a form, but the material and the way that you use the way of the production process must have a clash or have it doesn't go so easy to create what you want.
Well, one of the things that I'm interested in, is here that this material, in a way, is entropic. It always wants to fall on itself, and it's the entropy that gives a tension, in a way, between the thing standing up and not standing. There's a kind of liquidity to these forms that I'm quite interested in. And I think one of the things that, we're using high technology to make, in a way, low technology objects. Low technology, entropy, the sense, therefore, that they could almost have been made, by an animal, that they are scatological, that it's shit, that it's, and this work, of course, they're architectural in form.
Exactly.
So that tension between some primitive kind of architecture, a kind of archaeology, the body, the natural world, kind of all coming together. That's, I think, what this work's sort of pointing towards. I'm very interested in the idea of colour in space. The colour, in a way, especially in the way that I've used it over so many years, as material. It's both stuff, it's both physical quantity and a kind of illusion. Because paint is always illusion, colour is always illusion. This is a sort of occupying of the space, literally, in a way between the space of tension, in a way between the cannon and the corner, and shooting this red stuff that is, of course, all the obvious associations with blood and meat. But I'm also interested in a kind of psychosexual drama that there is between this very phallic cannon and the whole story, if you like, about the corner. The corner is very, very important in sculpture. Many sculptors over many generations have worked with this idea of the corner. Of course, it's a keystone of architecture, and by extension, you might say, of civilization, of culture. So, shooting in the corner seem to me to be related. And then, of course, there's a history of painting, from Goya. So time, I think, is one of the things that plays a big role. The way this works is the cannoneer comes in, the tanks fill, it takes a time. There's an audience here with a kind of expectation. It's going to happen now, how loud is it going to be, what is it going to be? And it's really that time, we try and make that time as long as possible. Many of the works in this show are, in a way, relating to time. To the idea that there is not only a time of kind of expectation, but a time of anxiety between the expected vision, and either a very simple or a slightly frightening moment. Even though the object's not actually doing, this is doing something.
Exactly.
Most of them are not doing, so to speak, anything. But it's as if they demand that you as a viewer have a very particular active role in their space.
What is challenging you to always, or to invite him several times to come back to him as an artist and to work with him?
Yes, it's indeed like this, that I know him and being a friend with him for more than 20 years. What I always like with artists is if they are willingly to expand their work in a significant way, which means not standing still and not repeat their own system, but to take an own challenge about what art means and what it means for the viewer and what it means in general, even including that these artists are capable to change our view on the world, which I think is a very important moment. As we are standing here, this is in the mirror spaces, this is a typical way how he expanded his work, as we know both that he started with these little small pieces covered with pigment, and he himself always saw his work balancing between color and sculpture. And another important idea is the idea of void. And when he started with all these ideas with void, something that is absent and not present, he sought to expand this idea with mirrors, using color and thinking about what it means for the viewer to stand in front of these mirrors, as the space he is creating with these mirrors is not the space on the inside, but the space is stepping out to the viewer and includes him in a certain area of not only the architecture, but that the body itself is part of the space which is created then as a united element. And I think no one else does it in such a sublime and beautiful way.
So in the exhibition we have this wonderful overview of all different kinds of models which are a certain thinking about how you are working with public space. Do they start from a commission or a request, or is it more coming from your curiosity to investigate what you can do in a certain space?
Well, a bit of both actually, because this one, for example, is Cloud Gate, which
yes.
is the model of the piece in Chicago. Then many of the others are ideas about, it's a way of, the great thing about models is that you can work at a really big scale with a small object. And I'm very interested in the idea that there's a certain kind of participation, a kind of a communal engagement in a way, in objects, that has quite a compelling force in it. I'm almost thinking of something like a kind of site of pilgrimage, or a site of very special whatever it is. That at one level, even though it has an author, is mythological. So that overlap from something that's made to something that was always there. It's the same idea in a way that there is in the cement works. And with a kind of auto-generated, always there sort of sense of the object. Essentially, I don't think it's that different. I think one of the tools of sculpture is scale. I'm not afraid in a way. I'm rather, more than not afraid. I think it's very compelling, this large scale. Yeah. Because it does something that you can't do in a gallery, at a gallery thing. But it always relates to the body. It always relates to the idea of a physical encounter. I mean, I obviously often start with drawings, ideas, little notes that then seem to coalesce around a particular kind of object. So, I've made sky mirrors, for example, where the mirror points at the sky this way, up at the sky. But here the idea is that if there was, if the mirror pointed down to sea and leant inwards this way, then, so it'd be almost like an ongoing film. So there is a relationship between these kinds of objects and photography. But the idea of this sort of continued flowing as reflected in the mirror. Just, it's a very simple idea at one level. But I have a feeling that its spatial quality, because it's curved in two directions, is very, very complex, that it wouldn't perhaps be so simple. On this floor, I mean, I've more or less thought of this floor as being in two halves. At one half there are void works, and the other half there are mirrored works. They both, in a way, do the same thing. One eats space, and the other one confuses space. And it's as if the idea is this sense that color, in a particular, especially very, very dark color, does something to the status of the object, which makes it into what I call the non-object. And similarly, mirror, especially when it is concave, and that's the thing with these works, is that they're all concave, both in this direction and in that direction. They're complex curves. That gives them a sense of unreadability. You don't know where the surface is, and of course they have a kind of focus. So the space they activate is the space in front of the object. I think, you know, this whole idea, if you like, of the performative in the object is very alive here. So in that you enter, as you enter the shadows, so to speak, of the mirror, it has a very active role on your body, you know, with your ears and with your eyes and your whole sense. There's a sense of vertigo. Yes. In a way. It's as if you're going to fall into the object. And that falling is very similar to the one, you know, that is the traditional sublime. The traditional idea of that when you look at, you know, a painting of the big, deep distance cast out in Friedrich or whatever, that you're, the whole idea there of the self lost in this lostness. Mirror does a very similar thing. So being present, you're also not present.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
I mean, it's, you know, in a way taking this idea of the void object, of the physical presence that isn't physical, of the non-object, to a slightly different place, you know, where really this is just a matter of how the form is made and pushed into the wall, that gives it this quality of both being present and not present. So, you know, it's a very pregnant, there kind of form that also has this sort of ephemeral, not present quality. And that's what I'm after with all these works, you know, the void work over there, and even this acrylic piece is attempting to deal with this idea of a kind of object which is becoming, which is, you know, it's happening. That again is happening as you look at it. I've often worked serially, in seriality, where you know, I make the same work or similar works again and again, to kind of see where else it can go. I mean, and there are some works which feel as if they are, you know, definitive moments. So maybe this is one of those. Who knows?
So we are extremely proud and thankful to have this wonderful new sculpture here in the space. And earlier you talked about scale and how scale is an instrument. Now this is probably in the exhibition the work which talks most of all about this idea of scale.
I mean, again, this is in a way, you know, yes, of course it's a big object, but it's also attempting to deal with this problem, you know, like this work here, or that work there in a way, deal with this problem of the object and, if you like, its interior. And of course, I'm playing with the architecture. When you're here, you have the volume of the object, the kind of shell of the object. And then as you go round to the other side, you have to kind of make a mental connection between the two. I think that becomes a kind of operation of a kind of, it's almost a kind of fantasy that you have to have as a viewer about the object. So scale operates in a very similar way, actually, because it also is a kind of imaging of yourself in relation to. And I think that's the point, is that the window, the object is slightly asymmetrical.
Exactly.
And that the window is off slightly to the side. So you get this sense of a dislocation. I think that's the word, really. It's a dislocation between the object and its own image on the other side.
Thank you.